They smiled in their mugshots, but behind those smiles were crimes so severe that freedom was never an option again. This video examines real cases of women whose actions led to life sentences or permanent confinement. These are not stories of impulse alone, but of planning, manipulation, untreated illness, and decisions that permanently destroyed multiple lives. Stay until the end, because the final case shows how a single neighborhood dispute escalated into a murder that triggered a nationwide manhunt. On April 1, 2013, Montgomery, Alabama became the scene of a carefully planned homicide that shocked investigators. Dominique Atkinson, a 24-year-old woman, helped orchestrate the killing of her partner's wife after traveling across state lines to carry out the crime. Prosecutors revealed that Atkinson had been involved in a long-term relationship with U.S. Marine Marcus Cheatham. Their involvement continued while he was married, creating a volatile situation that would later turn deadly. Early that morning, an altercation unfolded on Upper Wetumpka Road. When the victim attempted to escape, she was pursued and killed. Investigators later determined the crime was staged to appear as a robbery, a move intended to conceal its premeditated nature. Evidence showed extensive planning, including travel arrangements and coordination between Atkinson and Cheatham. While motive was debated in court, prosecutors emphasized control, jealousy, and long-standing conflict. In April 2016, Atkinson pleaded guilty to murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ending any chance of the future she believed the crime would secure. While this case involved planning and loyalty, the next reveals how vulnerability can be exploited to devastating effect. During the summer of 1984, a crime spree spread fear across multiple Midwestern states. At the center was Deborah Denise Brown, a young woman with documented cognitive limitations, who became involved in a series of violent crimes carried out alongside Alton Coleman. Brown had no prior criminal record before meeting Coleman. Prosecutors later described their relationship as one of domination and manipulation, with Brown placed in situations she struggled to fully understand or resist. Over several weeks, multiple victims were targeted across different states. Investigators found that trust and familiarity were often used to gain access before violence occurred. Brown was eventually arrested in Illinois. In court, her cognitive impairments became central to the legal proceedings. While she was initially sentenced to death in Ohio, that sentence was later commuted due to her intellectual disability. She remains incarcerated, her case continuing to raise difficult questions about culpability, manipulation, and the intersection of crime and cognitive limitation. Betrayal becomes even more devastating when it comes from someone trusted with children. In September 2006, a small Illinois community was shaken by a crime committed by someone deeply embedded in her victims' lives. Tiffany Hall was a trusted friend and caregiver to Jamela Tunstall and her children. Investigators determined that Hall attacked Jamela inside her home and attempted to assume her identity. Days later, Hall returned and took custody of Jamela's children with their father's full trust. The children were later found deceased. Evidence showed deliberate actions taken over multiple days, indicating planning rather than impulsive behavior. Hall's background included learning difficulties and mental health struggles, but prosecutors emphasized the calculated nature of her actions. Facing the possibility of capital punishment, Hall pleaded guilty. In June 2008, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Investigators later described her demeanor as cooperative but emotionally detached. Mental illness can explain behavior, but it does not always prevent tragedy. In October 2005, the San Francisco waterfront became the site of a tragedy that drew national attention. LaShawn Harris, a young mother with a long history of severe mental illness, carried out an act that would permanently alter how authorities discussed intervention and accountability. Harris had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and had experienced recurring delusions. Family members had repeatedly sought assistance from social services, expressing concern for her children's safety. On the day of the incident, Harris traveled to San Francisco with her 3 sons. Witnesses later described her behavior as calm but disconnected from reality. A jury later found Harris guilty of second-degree murder. However, the court ruled her legally insane at the time of the offense. Instead of prison, she was committed to a state mental health facility, where she remains under supervision. The case reignited debates about mental health treatment, warning signs, and systemic failure. The next case shows how ideology and paranoia can transform a personal dispute into murder. In May 1999, a Denver neighborhood dispute ended in fatal violence. Malaika Tamu Griffin, a college-educated woman with a background in chemistry, confronted her neighbor during a routine disagreement. Moments later, the confrontation escalated. The victim was shot and killed, and Griffin fled the scene, beginning a years-long manhunt. Investigators uncovered troubling evidence in her apartment, including extremist writings and weapons manuals. Her personal journals revealed fixation on conspiracy theories and ideological conflict. Despite repeated media exposure, Griffin evaded capture for 6 years by assuming a new identity and securing professional employment. She was eventually recognized and arrested in California. In 2006, Griffin was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Her case remains one of Colorado's most chilling examples of how ideology and paranoia can escalate into deadly action. These cases differ in motive and circumstance, but they share common threads: escalation, control, untreated illness, and failures to intervene. Each story ended the same way, with lives lost and futures erased. Understanding these cases is not about fear or spectacle. It is about recognizing warning signs and understanding how quickly unchecked behavior can turn irreversible. If you want more fact-based examinations of serious criminal cases and the psychology behind them, consider subscribing. Your support helps us continue responsible, educational reporting on difficult topics. Click here to watch the next video.